Elements inside of Canva cover a fairly broad spectrum. So there's everything from frames to hold photos to animated stickers to shapes and everything in between. So it's quite a lot to get through, but it's fairly simple to think about just items that you can drag and manipulate onto the design. But let's hop into a new Canva design to take a look at what that might look like. Let's do with a Pinterest board. So we'll go to the top left of Create a Design, do a Pinterest pin, just for example, and we're going to look at the elements. So that's over here. Now what's really important is the secondary action bar that sits above the canvas. Here it becomes very important because whatever you can do to this particular element will show up there. Most notably, if it's not a photo or something super specific, generally you'll be able to change the color as well as flip it and make some other adjustments. The color becomes very useful for us. But as you can see, you'll have a list of recently used, featured, just new ones that they want you to take a look at. Now grids, we can quickly review again. We covered in the photo one, but these are just squares, and you can very much think about it like photo frames. So they'll give you a bunch of layouts where you can drag photos into it. Bringing it in, you can adjust the shape of it generally. All of the squares will adjust based on how high it is. The very useful setting within the action bar here is spacing. So clicking into that will increase the spacing between the squares. So if you want to have a lot more distance between all of them. And then to fill it, you go over to the photo tab and just choose any of the photos. So if we search for beach, for instance, you can just drag them directly into the frames. So that's what the frames of the elements do. So, and specifically the grids, I should say, rather. Now the grids will work with photos, and that's why it's very important that those two are kind of mashed up together. Now this will jump around a little bit, but it's important to see that frames is very much like grids, as opposed to it being kind of block, square. Photo frames, though, it's various funky shapes. So if we go into that, you get everything from your basic kind of circle to kind of these swatches as if it's been scratched off the back. And as you can see, many different shapes in between. Even devices, if you wanted to put an image inside of a laptop, like here, for instance. And then this works the exact same way. You just drag a frame that you want to use, and then go back over to the photo tab, and take the photos and drag it in. Same with here, and another one down here. So really great looking stuff. Now I do want to point out one thing that you can do with the grids too. So I'm going to go back here, back in the Elements tab, X out the frame. Now if you ever go into one of these sections, you'll notice that you can get out of it by clicking the X. It's as if you've searched it and it's showing the results. To clear it, just hit the X. Now I want to bring in a grid because they act similarly as far as sizing the photo, which I want to show. So I just clicked on a grid, which brought it in. I'm now going to adjust it so we can kind of see it. I'm going to then go over to the photo tab and again just add a host of photos. Okay, 1, 2, 3, 4. Now this pineapple one seems to be the funnest. Let's work with that one. With grids, or with frames in particular, if you double click into it, you can now edit the photo that'll show within that shape. And this works for grids as well as these frames. So if you go ahead and edit this photo, you can see you can change the size and placement of the photo within the grid. So if you want like the bigger coconut like that, click on the outside, and as you can see, now it's like much larger, much bigger. So this works too with grids. If we double click inside of this one, again we can just vastly scale it, move it all around. So now the beach is bigger. Let's say we want to make this cocktail bigger. Double click within the grid and size it. So of the elements, we'll come back over here, and to get back to the full list, we'll hit the X from the search. Same here for back in the elements, it was search grid. You gotta hit the X or hit that tab again, and it'll jump back. So that are the grids and the frames. So they are very much photo holders. So as soon as you place them in, either in a really kind of funky shape or a bunch of boxes, then go back to the photo tab and drag them in. Remembering that you can double click and then edit the photo within it, including filters and all that other great stuff. Going to remove these for now. Actually, we'll leave that here. Let's do a new page. So I click at the bottom to the Add New Page button, and we grab one here. So shapes. Very straightforward. It's exactly what you think they would be. Just every shape possible. What is kind of interesting is beyond your basics. So you have the circle. And with this particular shape, you'll see that your options are fairly limited to just changing the color. Now where it becomes a bit more interesting is, let me just go get rid of that. I'm going to go over to the Photo tab, and let's keep with our beach theme. We had this lovely drink on the beach. So we'll go over to Elements. We're already in Shapes, but we go Elements. You see Shapes here, see All. If you scroll down, there starts to be some more interesting elements that you could start to play with. So all basic shapes, those work really well. And here too, what's really useful is to remember that you can layer and duplicate. So before I get to the next step, just quickly, for instance, if we wanted to add kind of postcard tabs to the corners, we click this one here. So I just added a triangle, reduce it down. I'm going to go ahead and make that, let's say black, as if it's on a old poster board. Copy, paste, bring that up here, rotate it, put that at the corner, Control C, Control V, or Command C, Command V. Now I'm just having selected, you'll see there's the rotate button that comes around. This is true for all elements. Control C, Control V, copy and paste, and again, bring that over here. So the only reason I show that is to remember that you can layer them, duplicate them, and move them around to produce effects. So don't think about these shapes independently only. Like remember that you can, much like anything else you would build or kind of arrange on a table, you can construct things as well if a particular shape or a design doesn't exist. So in this case, adding tabs to a photo. In this case, let's add another page again. We're going to do that. Let's use the button up here, the tiny plus button, add a new page. Okay, same photo. What I wanted to show was if you scroll down inside of shapes within elements, you'll find there's a lot more interesting ones. So beyond circles, where you can kind of see through the middle, various kind of outlines, be it the circle or the square, zigzags, mouse pointers like hand point, cursors, really interesting ones. You also get ones like this, like a series of lines. And if I drag that in, let's go ahead and make that a kind of brighter color so we can see it. You could see where you could start to have a little bit of fun in layering shapes on top of one another to create some unique and interesting effects. So here, this was just a grid of orange lines that we could use. If we duplicate this page again, same effect with a square. Let's go down. We have some frames here, so frames that could sit within or on the photo. This guy here, and again, as with all these, when you click it, you'll have the options within the secondary action bar. We'll click that. If we make that orange, so now we've made a photo frame. So shapes cover a fairly wide variety of options of what you can do, and it takes a little bit of exploration. It really helps for you to either search if you're looking for a particular shape. So up here, if you're looking for heart, you can see you get the various heart shapes that would come up, as well as stickers, which we'll cover in a second. Or for instance, just a basic square, and they come up the various versions of it as well. So search really helps, but you'd be well served to go through and just explore so you get an idea of all the various shapes. So when it comes time to actually produce a design, you have a greater array of things that you can use. So one more point on shapes that I'd like to cover. I'm going to get this. When you do bring in a shape, you'll notice two. So I'm going to add a square. Oops. Let's bring a square here, and let's also bring a circle. So to get to a circle, for instance, you go into the elements, shapes, find one, or you can just right from the elements tab, search for circle, and it comes up. So there's the circle. I just want to bring this one because I want to show a one kind of key difference. So you notice on this top shape that when I click into it, there are two types of areas I can grab. So if I grab a corner, I can click and drag, and that will increase or decrease the size, but keep the ratio. So in this case, since it's a square, if I grab the corner and drag it, it'll make it bigger or smaller, but it will make sure it stays a square. If I grab the little tabs on the side, it's going to let me stretch it. in the different dimensions. So in this case, I could turn it into a rectangle. Right? So when you're grabbing a shape, pay attention to those to see if they pop up, and that will help you know if you can adjust it to make, to warp the shape to make it into something else. You'll see here for the circle shape, same thing, you can see it appear, and you can drag it out, and that'll let you make it into a oval in that case. Now this shape that I grabbed, the circular orange line, doesn't have those, so I'm going to be limited in what I can do. I can make it bigger, I can make it smaller, but I'm not going to be able to stretch it and make it into an oval. So there's going to be a little bit of experimentation, but as long as you kind of bring it out there and you know what to look for, you'll get along just fine. So let's get back to the elements. You can click on the X to get rid of circle, or click on elements again. So stickers. You can think of these as emojis, or if you're familiar with Instagram, very much just stickers adding it. So tend to be a bit tongue-in-cheek, kind of fun, and often they're animated too. Now, animated is only going to work if you have output your final image as a video, or if you have Pro, you can download it as a GIF. So do realize that you're not going to be able to download it in its animated form unless you do it as a video, or if you have Pro, you can download it as a GIF. But again, the best thing, if you're familiar with any social media, Facebook or Instagram, it's very much the same idea with stickers, where it's kind of fun, tongue-in-cheek, often animated, little items that you can add for a bit of character and fun within your designs. I've never seen anyone turn down a dancing ice cream. So here too, you'd be kind of well served to search and kind of get a sense of what it's for. So if you want to do it by, so we have a day, we have a coffee mug, something of course close to my heart. Tell you what, I'd choose coffee over ice cream any day. So we have the beautiful coffee going, and again, you're going to be really well served by search in this case. So if you wanted a cat, for instance, you'll be able to find a whole bunch of those. In this case, looks like most of them are static within the elements. So that is the sticker. Now, one of the almost unexpected elements that you can find within Canva is charts, and they work very much like charts if you've used them in PowerPoint or Excel, where it's an element, you can then add numbers to it and then have things stack up and show as you would like. So in this case here, if you have the 4, I just click the simple bar chart. If we go 1, 2, 3, 4. Right, and if we increase the top number to, let's say, 80. Oops, I added a number 5 by accident, but quick delete, we'll put that out there. As you can see, so that when you do edit it, when I first brought it out, you see that the board showed up on the left side immediately. If you want to get to that again, just click onto the graph you're editing and go over to Edit, and you'll see it arise here. So much like Excel or PowerPoint or anything else, as you add numbers, it's going to adjust and readjust for you, which is great. You can change the color, of course, of the bars, which is very useful. Change the size of the font. You can change the color of it to anything you need. Now, this could be very useful if you're putting together a report of any type. If you use the presentations within Canva that you can put together, this type of thing could be quite useful for you. Click on this, click into Edit, and that is, of course, the bar chart. We have row, line, donut chart, all the heavy hitters you're used to, and donut. So a bit surprising really that such a design program would add in this functionality, but it works very simply and quite beautifully really. And if we go into it here, not only do we have the various styles we just went through as far as donut, row, and bar chart, you can see there's various other elements as well. Various other types that you could consider. Example here with a nice Venn diagram. Let's go to a new page. Let's add a donut. Now in these cases, these are static elements. They're not live like the previous ones. So at this point, we're kind of getting into stickers or visual representation of charts as opposed to actual live elements. But those are represented here at the top. Again, if you just kind of click in the line, you'll see it's the same item there. So charts. Moving right along, I think the last two items really of note that make the most sense to kind of speak about here are gradients. Now you can think in very simply, it's very much like just shapes that have two color tones. So you'll have a kind of blob instance like this. Now I said two color tones, really it could be any number of color tones depending on the particular shape. This one, for instance, has two, but this shape that I brought in has three. And if you drag it out, you can have all the usual shape controls as far as sizing, but then be able to change the colors of the gradient. So let's select now this middle one, make that orange. We'll select this last one, kind of make it a deeper orange. So a blue to orange transition. So scrolling through here, you're going to see a bunch of funky shapes, kind of normal ones like a triangle that then you can just add a gradient to. You can get brush strokes, swirls, you can get some kind of retro layered things like you'd almost see on a coffee cup from the 80s. But again, just some options for changing the color, choosing how you want it to look, and if you want to add a splash or have a particular gradient, you have lots of options within here. So moving along, lines. Now frustrating with lines, you have the basic line here. I'm going to make that dark so we can kind of see it, at least a red color. Now you notice that when you click on it, you can't control the thickness. So that might be a problem. If you wanted a really thin line as opposed to this one uniform thick, I'm going to show you a quick trick. So you can change the color. That's the only option given to you in the secondary action bar. However, trick to do is if you grab the length here. So on the side here, you'll see the little tab, which allows us to make it longer or shorter. If you drag that out and then click on the corner and shrink it, you'll notice that it's going to scale it down based on the entire width. So let's say if we want it to be the width of our entire document, what you could do is, now in this case I'm going to have to zoom in so I can better see it. You'll notice that when I was at 100%, or I could actually see the entire thing, I had lost the tab. I couldn't see that anymore. So a way to get past that is you just zoom in. So now I can see it. So I'm clicking. I'm just going to drag it over. I'm going to click. I'm going to drag it over. Just go, go, go. And you can mess with this as much as you need to get as thin as you need. So now that I've extended a whole lot further by zooming in, grabbing the tab on the side, and I'm making the same one long, too long in fact, for my final design. But the reason for that is now, with it too long, I'm going to grab the corner and I'm going to scale it. I'm going to scale it, I'm going to scale it, I'm going to scale it, and this will allow me to create a very thin, nuanced line, which is really nice. Now that line was the same thickness as this one when we started. So you can see that really useful trick with lines in particular. So besides the flat line, of course, you're going to have a bunch of various different styles. Ones with connections between the two of them, brush strokes, multi-lines, dotted lines here. Get a better color that we actually see it. So lots of fun options. Now, much like the other shapes, you're going to need to bring it out there and experiment to see what the options are. In this dotted line, for instance, there is no option to make it longer. Right? But once you know, remember with all the shapes though, you can duplicate things to create what you maybe don't have by default. And in this case, if I make it nice and small, Control C, Control V, and line it up nicely, you could extend the line. So always remembering that you have as many of these as possible as you need. You can duplicate, reposition, and use however you like. So line's pretty straightforward, and of course arrows are kind of attached to it. Plenty of options to explore within that. Let's get back to the elements. And lastly would be illustrations, and the rest of them I'll explain here in a second. But illustrations, kind of as you would expect. Now I have a pug at home, so of course I have to place this guy here. I'll tell you what, let's go back to elements. Let's grab a line, and let's give him something to stand on. Just can't resist. Apologies for that. But within illustrations, you'll have just as much as it would be alluded to, just drawings. So it could be drawings of flowers, stars, rose petals. In this case, we have a colorful monkey here as well. all interesting stuff. And again, always remembering that whatever you bring in, look to the secondary action bar and you'll see if you can make edits. So in this case here, we can even change the coat of the pug. Let's say you have a black one as opposed to a fawn. So illustrations would be very much just drawn elements that you could use. Now there are many more categories here, which you could, again, I really implore you to discover and kind of search through. But at this point, really what is really the best way to go about this is to use search. Search here is incredibly powerful for typing out. So if we wanted a pug, let's say, and I hadn't just stumbled upon it by accident, you can see by searching for it, I'll immediately see it. Now pay attention, because of course if there is the $sign, you're going to have to purchase it. So you want to be careful to only use free ones unless you're just absolutely sure you're going to want to purchase it and put down some money for it. But anything you could be searching for. If we search for a sun, we'll see some really great illustrations in a whole bunch of different styles. If we search for, let's say, words, get a bunch of really interesting words like cool, like various things like that. Search here is going to be really powerful. So if you have an idea, if you have a inspiration design that you're working off of, a theme even, if we say science, you get into a bunch of things within that theme. Search works very well, and it's going to be the fastest way for you to get to the various shapes. When I'm designing for my own clients and for my own work, even if I know exactly where square is, I'll honestly just kind of come to elements and search for square to get it to come up, because that tends to be so much faster and quicker. So that's always really useful for it. So what I'd really implore you to do is to come into these various features, various kind of categories, browse, search, practice using them, see what options are available to you, so that when it comes time to actually produce your design, you have a good idea of how they work and some kind of cool ideas for what's available to you. And so next time you need a dancing ice cream or a pug, you know you're going to be well served by some of the elements here in Canva. So that is the Elements tab, which has just about everything under the sun, including the sun, if we find an illustration for that, but really enabling you to add any type of character, image, element to the design that you would need to produce just about anything else you need to design. See you in the next lesson.